And that's one of the signs, I think, of coming into alignment, is when we dare to dream and dream big, and we dare to visualize, and to have a vision of how we want to be and how we want to be of service to others, how we want to be of service to the world, that sense of identity and mission that is bigger than the self. And once we have clarity on that, and once we can visualize that clearly for ourselves, that begins to influence and filter all the way down through beliefs, through to behaviors, and all the way through. So it's a very powerful way to work, and it is very transformational.
Hello and welcome to the Weight Free Wellness Podcast. I'm Tara Bachland, the founder and the creator of the Weight Free Wellness Podcast and platform. And today's guest is holistic therapist Lucy Ann Chard. She helps you get clarity on your heart's core desires and align your life and career goals with your innate talents. Now, that's kind of a mouthful. I like to say, as a summary, she helps you find your life purpose, helps you get aligned with your soul's plan and purpose. And, I mentioned this in the podcast, but it's worth repeating that I wish I had known her several years ago when I was really struggling with this. And I know by talking with others, you're on one side of the fence or the other. You're either like, I don't understand how a person could not be aligned, or there are those of you who are like me, who are like, there's just something inside. I can't get in tune with it. I feel lost. I'm struggling. So this is definitely for you. If life purpose seems to be a struggle, no matter where you're at in life, I encourage you to check out this podcast. And I totally agree with what Lucy teaches, many of her points, but especially the aspect of getting to know yourself. One of the transition points for me was understanding myself better, and body typing was a key component to that. And I teach body typing in regards to wellness and teaching the foods, exercises, and the habits that help you feel more balanced, but it also helps you just to simply get to know yourself better. Do you take after the earth, fire, air, or water elements more? And what does that mean? So I've put together the body typing quiz at weightfreewellness.com. You can take that, learn about your body type, and get lots more information there as well. So I encourage you to take that as a part of your journey. Lucy mentioned some more terrific resources. So listen up and enjoy. Here you go. So Lucy, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to talk about what holistic therapy is. I have actually interviewed a couple people who go by the name holistic therapist, and it covers a whole gamut of things that people can do. And from your website, I plucked out this phrase because I absolutely love it. And from talking with you earlier and getting to know you through a program that we were both involved in, that holistic therapy, what you do, you help people to get clarity on their heart's core desires and align their life and career goals with their innate talents. And as I read that, I'm like, holy cow, where was this lady a couple years ago when I totally needed her? So I'm really excited to talk about this topic.
Thank you. Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here today. And so thank you very much for having me. And that quote, if you like, is something that it resonates really deeply for me because it's been part of my own journey as well. In fact, all of this work has. And you're right. Yes, the title of holistic therapist, what that means for me is it's bringing in a real sort of tools and techniques from different modalities that I've learned over the last couple of years in order to be the most supportive and the most helpful to my clients that I can. So utilizing a combination of techniques in my work so that it is a fully well-rounded and whole package for the person and so that I'm able to best serve their needs.
Absolutely. I was impressed when I looked at all the aspects of what you offer, which I'm excited to. Well, I actually got to experience one of them, which we'll get into in a little bit, because that was really a delightful experience and so insightful. So not to get too far ahead, but give us a little bit of your background and process through this.
Sure. Okay. So since I was a small child, I've always been fascinated by human behavior. That has taken me through my whole young adult life, where I studied drama. So I was fascinated with character work, what makes characters tick. So that was the element of the drama work that I loved the most, was understanding the psychology about why people do the things they do. But I really started doing this work in earnest, I guess, back in 2011, when my own self-healing journey began. And that was, I guess I'm grateful now, thanks to a skin cancer diagnosis, where I went through a series of surgical operations and quite invasive procedures. And that was a real wake-up call for me to acknowledge how disconnected I was in my own life, how I was disassociated from myself, and how I'd really I hadn't forgotten, but I'd put to one side my own creative expression. I'd put to one side my own needs and my own heart's core desires about what I wanted from my life and what I love to do. So the shock of a skin cancer diagnosis at a fairly young age really brought me back with a jolt into alignment through a process of really uncovering and rediscovering and recovering my sense of purpose. And that was through, a combination of things like energy healing work, creative journaling, and really doing some deep inner inquiry work into what it is that actually lifts me up, that what it is that makes my heart flourish, and how to bring aspects of that into my everyday life. So, not making drastic changes, leaving relationships, none of that, but actually doing the deep work, because there are no shortcuts with this work, doing the deep work on myself first, and bringing all the aspects of myself and all the aspects of my life slowly back into alignment. So, I felt whole and complete and able to move forward.
So I'm curious, did you feel before you had the diagnosis that you were disconnected, or was life pretty normal?
So I did feel disconnected, although it was, I think when someone feels disconnected, it takes, in my case, it took an external, event to jolt me back into that realization. So I felt, like I said earlier, I felt disassociated from myself. So, friends and colleagues would say to me, "Hey, how are you doing?" And I would say, I feel like I'm standing beside myself. Mm-hmm. I feel beside myself, because the way I could visualize it and the way I felt was that I was actually not in my body. I was just observing my life and being an observer and not fully present and not fully engaged. And so, I was merrily going along and actually feeling very unhappy in many, many aspects of my life. I suffered from crippling anxiety. Mm. And I had built up a life around me that was designed to please others, but not myself. So that was a real process of reality hit, if you like.
Mm-hmm. What I find so fascinating in your case is really a great example of this is how there's metaphor everywhere. And you mm-hmm. say that you felt like you were beside yourself, but not in yourself. And another analogy for that might be like, maybe you didn't feel like you're in your own skin.
Yes, absolutely.
And how interesting is it that it was skin cancer that jolted you back in?
Totally. It was skin cancer that jolted me back in. It was also skin cancer that the original operation was on my head, which is, if you've ever had an injection to the forehead, I wouldn't recommend it, but it's painful. And it was that experience of being in my skin that really allowed me and encouraged me to shed the old skin that no longer fit anymore. Mm-hmm. So it was that realization and that experience and really a series of experiences that brought me into that place of going, wow, this doesn't fit anymore. You know, I'm wearing a mask, or I'm wearing a skin that feels too tight. I want to expand. I want to flourish now. And how am I going to do this?
And so was it pretty quick that you realized like the disparity? And
yeah, it was a real eye-opening moment. Yes, it was a moment of clear, of a real sort of clear direction or clear guidance that this is not right. I don't feel right, and I need to change something. I need to change. So the process of actually going through that change is an organic thing. It didn't happen straight away. I didn't kind of wake up one morning and everything was great. It was a process of streamlining, and like I was saying, of discovering how to fill myself up again, and how to actually look after myself, how to nurture myself. Because I realized that one of the biggest things was, my self-talk was pretty mean. And I was a really horrible, fickle friend to myself. I'd be really great and supportive to myself when things were going well, but then when things didn't go well, or if there were challenges, I would turn on myself. And that was a big reality check as well, was to begin to learn to shift that inner voice, and to turn the volume down on some of the really harsh things that were coming through, and then to do the deep work and to look at where they were coming from. So, there were some limiting beliefs. There were some beliefs around worthiness that I worked through. And that's really that's the work and the experience that I bring to my clients as well. One of the things that I believe very strongly in the work that I do is that I am unshockable, and that is true. It's I'm there to hold the space and be witness to whatever the client needs.
Did you say that you're unshockable?
Yeah.
What does that mean? I'm curious.
What that means is that I'm really there to hold the space for anything that anybody wants to talk about or to explore. Nothing that anyone says will cause me to go, because I've dealt with my own stuff, and my job is there to hold that safe space for them. So nothing is too risque or too extreme to bring to a session.
That's a really good point to make, because I remember going to therapists and so forth, and what's really challenging, and I really encourage anyone who's seen anyone for any kind of service, is to make sure your values line up. Yes. Because what is really challenging is when you're going to someone in a vulnerable state and you say something, and all of a sudden their own paradigms and their own values flash up, and they clearly you're just not in alignment. And so they, I think that's a really great thing to point out that.
Yeah. I think it's absolutely vital, and it's one of the absolute core values that I instill in every single one of my sessions and in the work that I do. It's one of my core beliefs to have that space for people who are coming to you, with their lives, and it's important to be able to hold that space.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what were some of the things that really started to help you along the way? What did you discover and start, courses or realizations? So
one of the most, I would say, most empowering entry points for me, and it's still a practice that I do today, was Hatha Yoga. So first and foremost, that was the practice of Hatha Yoga. So the breath work and the practice of the postures. So the moving meditation really helped to ground my energy and to bring me back into my body in a gentle and nurturing way, which is exactly what I needed at that time. So that was very important to me. And I used to go to class, and then I started practicing on my own mat every morning. And, Hatha Yoga is something that I come back to and I will continue to come back to. It's a beautiful practice. Again, the practice of meditation. So for me, it was interesting because at that stage, I started to kind of tap in to something which I now refer to as a chakra balancing meditation. So at that point, I hadn't learned about the chakras and what they are, but I would close my eyes and go inside and listen to my heartbeat, and then actually focus on the base of the belly, the base of the spine, the sort of solar plexus area, and really get a sense of alignment in the spine. So again, a meditation that was focusing in on the body, bringing myself back into me, being grounded, being here, being present. And that was extremely helpful. So I would start every morning, I would start my day with that practice, and it helped to just focus my thoughts and focus my energy. So also the enjoyment of being in nature. Now that may, it's such a vital thing, I believe anyway, for us. It was something that I had stopped doing. I had just disconnected from it. And I was spending a lot of time connected to social media, to all digital products, because I used to work in a digital environment. I worked in a TV company. And so I spent a lot of time looking down and being connected to some form of technology in some way. Even before I went to bed, I would be looking at some form of technology. And so the practice of really enforcing a digital detox on myself was very powerful, and it was very empowering to go outside. The wonderful thing, like we were talking about earlier, about the weather here in the UK, is you do get the extremes of the seasons. You get the winters, you get this magnificent spring, the bright summers, and then you get those amazingly brilliant, colorful autumns. You get the whole cycle of nature, and I'd become disconnected from that. So it was very important for me to actually feel my feet on the ground and to experience the seasons in all their glory. So that was a very, very important practice, and that still today is vital for me. In fact, I celebrate nature in every aspect. And I think in a lot of my posts, I reference nature in metaphor. I think for me, nature is one of my greatest teachers. So it was really important for me to connect back to the cyclical nature of things. And then with that, to connect back to the power of the moon phases as well, which is something that I had learned as a small child by chance. My mum was always very connected to the lunar phases, and one of my favorite stories is when we were small, my sisters and I, my mum used to say to us, look at the new moon and make a wish and bow 3 times. So that was our thing, that we'd make a wish on the new moon. So manifesting, making wishes for good things, bringing the energy into for what you want to create. And that was something that we started doing as children. And really beautiful ritual, and I'd forgotten about that. I'd been through, I'd disconnected from that aspect of myself, and so I got all my, my old books and the literature that I'd gathered through my teenage years, and I began to study it again. I began to relearn how to work with the seasons and the cycles in order to kind of harness my own energy and my own productivity.
So I want to jump back and start from here again, but I have to go back. So it's so interesting that you brought up yoga first, and was essential in yoga training. They taught us that the root of yoga comes from the word yuj, which means union or like yoke. Oh, it has a similar root. And it's so interesting. Everything that you're mentioning has to do with reconnection. Yoga having to do with reconnecting with your body through breath, through movement. Yeah. And so it doesn't surprise me that you say that, but I think it's like, again, these metaphors that come into life, of course, if you're disconnected, you do things that help you to reconnect.
Absolutely. I mean, the movement of the Hatha Yoga sequence and the practice was so incredibly powerful for me. And it's interesting that you say that, because what I used to find in the early stages is, at the end with Shavasana, which is the corpse pose, is I would lie there with my eyes closed and I would weep and not know where the tears were coming from. And my teacher, who I have huge respect and love for, said to me, Lucy, just allow. You're working through with the moving meditation. There's a lot of stuff that's being released. So allow, and I did, and it was beautiful. It was very, very healing, a very healing practice for me.
I'm very interested too, because we both I have an online presence, at least for our businesses.
Yes.
I'm really curious. How do you balance the social media and the online presence these days because it's such a critical part of business these days?
It is an important part of business. And as you say, particularly in this field and in the industries that we're in. And it's a fantastic gift that we have for reach, to expand reach. So for me, balance is about having a strict schedule. So I see social media as part of the work day, and I have it. I have social media as part of my work week. So I allocate time to it. So I used to work in strategy and planning in television broadcasting. So I'm a good scheduler and a good planner. So what I do is I block out periods of time in the week where I say, okay, this is for content creation. This is when I'm going to, schedule various posts, that kind of thing. And I'm strict with myself. I'm strict with myself that at night, the phone is off. It doesn't, I don't sit and kind of scroll through and just do a quick check. And in the morning, early morning is a really vital time for me. So I'm very, very dedicated and very committed to my morning routine, which is getting up every morning. And I do, before I even sit up, I close my eyes and I check in with my body. I listen to my heart. So it's one of the first things that I do is I always just listen. I listen to the heartbeat, and that, again, just grounds my energy and brings me back to myself. And then I do a practice called morning pages, which is something that I learned last year through Julia Cameron, who is a fabulous woman, a fabulous guide. And she wrote The Artist's Way. She's been teaching creative expression, I guess, and creative recovery for more than 25 years. And so I write 3 pages of free writing every morning, and that really is a writing meditation to just download my thoughts, download whatever's there, and then I spend some time, usually about half an hour or 25 minutes to half an hour, in a quiet meditation as well. I use something called the Insight app, which is really cool. So it doesn't. So I just use a gentle sound that helps to support that brainwave. I think I don't sort of listen to any guided meditations, but whatever works. So that's my routine. That's my approach to balancing technology. Otherwise, I do have a tendency, if I didn't do that, I do have a tendency to just continue working. That was part of feeling unbalanced. That was part of feeling disconnected from myself, was this tendency to just continue driving and striving for more, and not actually listening to the body when the body said, okay, enough now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Those are really great tools. I'm glad you mentioned them too. And I'll get that app and we'll put that in the show notes as well.
Yeah, that's great.
And I'm taking kind of a detour, but it's to come back around, because at this point I'm really curious is, what are some signs that you saw in yourself and with the clients that you work with? What are some signs of disconnect? Because even in my experience, it sneaks up on you. Like you don't know you're disconnecting as you're disconnecting, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, I need to fix this.
Absolutely. I mean, I would say one of the biggest signs that I have acknowledged in myself and in clients that have come to see me is the dreaded shoulds. When we start saying things like, oh, I really should do this, or I should be feeling this way, or I should engage like this, or I should be. So I call them the dreaded shoulds. And that to me is a sign of disconnection, or a beginning sign of disconnection. I used to live my life on shoulds. You know, I should be like this. Why? Who says? And for whom? So that's one of the things that I would say is a red flag for me. Feeling. So I would say that this is from my experience, that a feeling of anxiety in the core, so in the chest, feeling anxious is a sign of disconnect. That was from my own experience. Feeling, you know, like I didn't know what I was doing, or I had too much to do. I was sort of doing overwhelm a lot. That was a sign of being disconnected. And, you know, also just seeking guidance and seeking truth and seeking resolution, seeking approval, seeking confirmation, and seeking energy from external sources. So the way I experienced was seeking anything and everything that would validate me, but seeking it externally. Not looking in for answers, or not trusting that I actually knew what was right for me. So when I say looking externally, you know, reading every single self-help book that you could get your hands on, and knowing all the information intellectually, but not understanding it in the body. Joining every seminar that you could possibly find, and still feeling lost. Signing up to every course that was available at the time. And, you know, in the past, I think we spoke about this, I tended to collect courses, which was one of the signs for me that I was disconnected, because it was a distraction, you know, a distraction to just keep hoarding courses, but not actually doing the work. So looking externally for validation, looking externally for someone or something to give you a sense of identity, instead of actually looking at the self and looking at what it is that you want. And, you know, I found in the work that I do, one of the deepest questions and one of the most important questions is, what do you want? And oftentimes when you ask people, when I've experienced, when you ask people that, they're very good, and we're very good at articulating what it is that we don't want. But we're not that good at articulating what we do want. So that's also a sign of disconnect. Not knowing what it is that makes us tick and makes us feel alive, feel vital, and seeking answers elsewhere rather than going inside, and understanding in your own body what feels like a yes and what feels like a no, because it's different for everyone. And, you know, it's extremely empowering to learn to listen to what the body is saying. If you enter a room, for example, and your body goes, this is not a great place for me, it's important to listen to that. Same when it says, yes, this experience is going to, you know, it feels, it feels exciting, or it feels a bit scary, but wow, my body is saying this is about expansion, to go with that feeling, to trust it, because the body is so wise.
That's, you know, when I've explained this, having experienced this, I know to some people this sounds totally foreign. It's like, how could you not know what you want and move towards it? And how could you be so confused? But it's in recent studies too, it seems almost like a personality characteristic. And I've been listening to this psychologist recently, a clinical psychologist who really puts things in really wonderful perspective. And I recently learned that there's an aspect of personality called your agreeableness. And on the other end of the spectrum is a disagreeable type of personality. And we're all on that spectrum to one degree or another.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've experienced in your working with people that those who, because he brings it up in a different way, that those who are very agreeable, which has its pluses, it has its reasons why some of us are more agreeable. But the challenge is that you tend to be a people pleaser, or you're trying to get that external approval. So you're agreeable. That means that you're likable in a sense. But the downfall is that you lose that contact with your inner self of, okay, what do I want? What's healthy for me? What's healthy for me in a part of this situation, not just what's good for everybody else.
Absolutely. That's so powerful. And I believe we're either working from a place of connection or perceived separation. And I work with what I call recovering people pleasers and recovering perfectionists. And that's certainly been my experience as well. This sense of creating a life that looks from the outside, that looks like it's right, and being in a life and being a certain way to please other people. And imagine one of the questions that I asked myself when I was sort of doing the deep work on myself and studying actually towards this practice, was, imagine how wonderful it would be if we could move forward making decisions based on flourishing and what that means for us, what that means for you to flourish, and being able to learn to say no to the things that don't support that, because that's huge. That's a big step, to say no, and to make a different choice, to make a choice that allows you to flourish, rather than the opposite. Yeah.
So I'm curious about some, people that typically come to you. When we talked earlier, it sounds like they span all kinds of lines of work, times in life. Could you share a few examples and the tools that you use to help people through their situations?
Absolutely. I think the really important aspect of the work, as we were saying earlier, is about connection. So connection to ourselves and then connection to each other, and discovering and recovering personal mission, life purpose. And we have sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes we have some limiting beliefs that are like hurdles, that prevent us from achieving that purpose and from living in alignment. And so that's where some of the work comes in, is to work through and to help support the person to move through and to shift those limiting beliefs into empowering ones. So so my client base varies, as we were saying, but it's more often than not, it's people who are coming who are feeling in some way, they're feeling disconnected in their lives, disconnected from their loved ones, disconnected from their purpose. I have a lot of people who come to me who are in careers, so they've made a career, but they feel like their creative expression, that creative aspect of their lives, has been compartmentalized into a small box that they can only access as a reward once they have the career, the house, the salary, the car. Once they've achieved those benchmarks, then they will access their creative expression. And so there's a sense of disconnect and a sense of unhappiness and perhaps being out of alignment. So my job is to work with them and to support them to bring creative expression into in an everyday aspect of their lives, so that really all of those aspects are brought into alignment for them. So I deal with people who have anxiety, have experienced anxiety, social anxiety, lack of confidence, lack of self-belief. And that, again, spans across different professions, from lawyers through to entrepreneurs, through to performers who have stage fright. There are people who are coming through who need the space to be held and to experience what they need to experience to heal. So I focus very much on healing, aligning, and flourishing. So those three aspects are very important in any of the modalities that I offer.
And to me, even in my own journey, it's a process. So I don't imagine that it's necessarily a one-time consultation that would, I'm sure you can get a lot out of a one-time consultation, but to me, I just kind of harken back to when I was going through this. It would have been really wonderful. And I was fortunate to have people in my life who were very helpful, but to have someone who's just spot on these things, it would be helpful to have over a couple months at least through the process.
Absolutely. Look, I think it depends on the needs of the client. So certainly, with a practice like NLP and hypnotherapy, for example, it's an amazing practice. It's a very powerful practice to make powerful, lasting change quickly. Mm-hmm. So with my NLP and hypnotherapy clients, again, depending on what they need and where they are in their lives, we can powerfully resolve some issues or challenges that they used to have in a number of sessions. It doesn't necessarily have to be over a long period of time. What I do is a practice that I love, and I think that we experienced, was the soul plan readings. And what I like to do is if the client is open to it, is introduce a soul plan reading as a starting point, because it's a fantastic, well-rounded approach to really getting to understand your innate talents and how those talents can help you to overcome the challenges that you experience in your life in order to achieve goals. And then from there, if the client wishes, then we can work into a program. So that's currently what I offer. Is I do offer sessions separately, but I also offer it's called the Radiant You program, where we start off with a soul plan reading, and then we move from there into a combination of tools like NLP, hypnotherapy, Reiki, if it's needed.
I can see the soul, and I was fortunate to receive the soul plan reading from you, which is tremendously insightful. And I know in part of my journey, that's the kind of stuff that I was seeking out.
Yeah.
Intuitively, when I was going through this kind of struggle, is okay, let's go back to the basics and understand at a soul level what it is that's really calling me. And it's like, I knew that was inside, like I knew that message, but it was confirmation.
Yeah.
It was really helpful confirmation. And what I found interesting about the soul reading in particular is that it shows you what may be challenges. And then I thought, especially the confirmation or the affirmations that you provided were really beautiful. They've resonated very well.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think, I certainly, it's a practice that really resonates with me. I know when I had my soul plan read, initially it was eye-opening. And again, it was, as you say, there was that resonance deep inside, not only for talents and sort of innate understanding of where my strengths are, but confirmation of how I can use them in a practical way, in a really practical, physical sense, to overcome the challenges that I've experienced, and to know that that this whole life, this whole complete life, is a beautiful yin and yang fluid process, working in the light, working in the shadow as one, and to how to make it work in the most beautiful and sort of healthy way that we can.
So when you were looking at a soul plan chart or reading, does it kind of occur to you, like, do you have these ideas of like, oh, this person would be if they just incorporated this into their life, it would even things out. Do you get kind of these sparks, or do people start speaking to you? Like which way does the process tend to happen?
So normally what I would do with the soul plan is it is an intuitive practice, but it's also based in numerology, science, and spirituality. So we work with the ancient Hebrew alphabet, and we work with a 6-pointed star called the Star of Creation, which is a method of soul plan reading that was actually created by, it's sort of in the second half of last century, by a man called Frank Alpha, who was a visionary. He wrote the book Discovering Atlantis. And so the method that we use today and that we experience together has been extended and added to and further created by a man called Lou Marsden, who is the founder of the Holistic Healing College in London. So when I do a soul plan reading, and I look at a person's chart and the wholeness of them and the different aspects of their worldly and spiritual life, yes, I do have, there is a lot of information that comes through. There's a lot of information that downloads. But generally what happens with the reading is it's an organic, fluid process. And so I will, mention something about the information that comes through with regards to the numbers or symbols that person has working for them on an energetic level. And that's, they will connect with that, and then that's when they will begin to speak. So it's quite it's a fascinating process of intuitive guidance and insight, and then really, again, holding the space and allowing for that person to engage with the conversation at a level that is suitable for them.
So I'm curious, you could choose either question, okay? So this it seems like a game show. A or so either if you have an example of working with a client where just something just popped up in their chart, or they mentioned it just like sparked something for them, or you could answer B, given my chart, either if you had known me or didn't know that I do this podcast and stuff, what would be your commentary about the alignment? Because this podcast absolutely came out of those challenging times and soul searching. So which question would you like to answer?
Well, I think seeing as we've recently engaged with your soul plan, I'll go with B, if that's okay.
All right.
And it was such an interesting, every soul plan reading is fascinating. If I didn't know you at all, and if I didn't know about the podcast and the work that you do currently, certainly from looking at the soul plan, it was very evident that this person had been through, and I think what we talked about was an experience that could be likened to a dark night of the soul. And again, that's not meant to sound dramatic, but a real sense of incredible endurance, strong energy, and having gone through difficult times, tough times in life, and come through in a very, very strong way with high sense of resilience and the ability to take those experiences and to transmute them in a way that is empowering for all of us, and to access the really pure teaching energies that they have in talent, and to take those experiences, transmute them, and to use them to teach us, to teach us about their experience and how we can gain from it. So that's certainly something that came through very, very strongly, and a real sort of tendency, a real sense of having a clear and deep connection to what I would term all that is, or to source energy, to the universe. So plugged in, and being able to download that information and bring it into the world in a physical sense. So really, again, working with the body, working with physicality, working with the notion of nurturing. I think nurturing came up quite a lot. so nurturing, nutrients, nourishment, that kind of thing, to bring that into this physical world, again, for us to access, to make it easy for other people to access, so that sense of enlightenment, if you like, through the work that you create in a concrete way. And the other thing that came through that was so strong that I thought was fascinating was this amazing sense of being a very old soul and having the choice and coming through with a choice to go with a world that was more material based or a world that was more spiritually based, and to have a very, very strong business sense. So being able to bring all of that knowledge and that experience of all the many lifetimes, and to bring the aspects together into this lifetime to create a container for that knowledge and a container for that experience. Does that kind of answer the question?
That's great. Yeah. And it's a really great review of the process too. And what's so interesting, and I wasn't kidding, and I wasn't being dramatic when I said at the beginning of the podcast, I wish I had known you a couple of years ago, because, even when you're doing this journey on your own, you could do your own soul chart and read about these things, but someone else is going to see different things.
Yeah.
And have some guidance. And I mean, fortunately for me, my husband is also an NLP practitioner. And so I'm fortunate to have experienced the results that you can experience in having someone help you. I've gone to hypnotherapy, done past life regressions to see how all these little pieces come together. And in hindsight, it's like, oh, of course, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
But to have someone, and I, hands down, a couple of years ago, had I known about you or someone like you, I would have been like, sign me up. Because now, and granted, I believe we all have our process too. Going through the process, you learn a ton. But to get this insight into your soul, and obviously my reading already shows that I'm into this kind of stuff. Yeah. But to understand who you are at a soul level, and then have the tools like the hypnotherapy and NLP to help you with your more like your personality kind of stuff, like getting over fears, like you had mentioned, even your negative self-talk, is you need those components.
Absolutely. And, and working with the limiting beliefs, it's so important to have the knowledge from the soul plan. So understanding, really getting a great sense of what you're here to do, and how you can do it. But then, as you say, having the really practical tools and techniques to actually help get you there, and to work through any limiting beliefs, work with that negative self-talk, and to dare to dream. Part of my the part of my work and part of my branding that I talk about on my website is that I support dreamers and visionaries, the people who dare to dream, and that's one of the signs, I think, of coming into alignment, is when we dare to dream and dream big. And we dare to visualize, and to have a vision of how we want to be, and how we want to be of service to others, how we want to be of service to the world. That sense of identity and mission that is bigger than the self. And once we have clarity on that, and once we can visualize that clearly for ourselves, that begins to influence and filter all the way down through beliefs, through to behaviors. And all the way through. So it's a very powerful way to work, and it is very transformational.
So I'm curious, you bring up, dreams and thinking big. And when you're and speaking from personal experience here, when you're in the fearful state, you're speaking to yourself in your head negatively. It's really hard to think bigger. So I'm curious, from your own personal experience or working with your clients, what have been some opening up, dream big transformations? Yeah.
So, for example, I had a client who came to me, who was feeling, these are her words, she was feeling stuck in her life, and feeling quite blocked, particularly with regards to personal relationships. And so we did some work. We did some work around limiting beliefs. We did some work around worthiness. And we also did some work on body wisdom. So getting to know her own body and understanding, how to access the different energy centers in her body through the breath. So again, utilizing the yoga practice and the breathing practice. And, through that combination, what began to happen was she began to tap into the heart, which is vitally important in this work for all of us. She began to tap into the heart and to heal that heart space. So not only in terms of a personal relationship, but actually acknowledging that what she wanted to do was to go traveling. So this was a big thing for her. It was to make that decision. I think it's a big thing for anybody to make that decision. And she did it. So she actually found the resilience and the energy that she needed to make that decision and to book and to go ahead. And that for me feels like that's a beautiful transformation of seeing someone really flourish and align, flourish into themselves, and to expand in a way that is empowering for them. Because the experiences that she's now having will only fill her life, and she's accessing what I call her bliss, which is that sense of what really lights her up. So that was very powerful.
So what was, if you can share, what were some things that were holding her back? Because I think all of us can think, well, I would love to go traveling too, but, so how do you work through those?
So without going into too many details, it was, limiting beliefs around age and stage of life and how I should be according to what society says. So, being in a certain stage of life and saying, I should, again, the shoulds come in. I should be at this point in my career. I should be in a stable relationship. I should have kids. I should have all of these things. And yet my heart is yearning for something else. But at that point, she hadn't listened to that. She hadn't even acknowledged what her needs were. So there were a couple of some limiting beliefs there around identity and who she should be versus who she actually is and who she wants to be. And that was a very creative process. It's a creative process of bringing all parts of herself, because she felt disconnected in the sense that there was an internal conflict. So to bring all parts of herself back into alignment and to move forward from there. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. I appreciate you sharing that little bit extra. I think it brings it together, because I think we all have, many of us have those things. And the should make excuses. I want to, before we conclude, I'd like to harken back to you mentioning anxiety and how that's a really common trait. And going back to the psychologist that I've been listening to, gave a really great explanation of anxiety that's not just biologically based. And he explains how, in a state of anxiety, it's natural. We have these natural reactions in us that date back to our Paleolithic times in our ancestors, just survival. And he explained how anxiety is when you are unsure, like you're looking ahead and you see unsure ground. And so the signal to your body is, okay, wait, stop, and assess and figure this out. But if you're constantly in this process, he explained it, you tear down your body tremendously if you're in a constantly anxious state when you can't figure out how to move ahead. And that was like a big aha for me, that anxiety is beyond, it's beyond just biochemical stuff. It's actually a reaction to what's going on in our life or not going on.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, from my own experience, I experienced anxiety from a young age, from a childhood. And what I found, and again, this is from my experience, is it became a habit. So I became, without realizing, I became addicted to the anxious hormone, the anxious feeling, the anxious emotion. It became a way that it was a very strong link in my brain. It was an automatic choice when I was faced with a situation that felt different. So when I was faced with change, it became something that I would do. I would do anxiety. And so it became like a drug. It became, something that I would feed off, actually. And I realized and I recognized that I was living my life in a state of constant chaos. And I was living my life in a state of, constantly thinking and preparing myself for the worst, just in case. And that for me was deeply about lack of trust in myself, in my own body, lack of trust in my ability to adapt, my ability to be resilient, my ability to make choices that would actually result in my survival. So it was deep lack of trust in the self, and so that also again brings me back to that body wisdom and again getting to know the body, because someone when I was working through this, one of my teachers said to me, "Isn't it beautiful that you have recognized lack of trust in the self? But isn't it beautiful that your body is always working with you, is always working for you, is always there supporting you, because you know that your body is telling you, it's responding. Your body is intuitive. It's letting you know." And as soon as that, there was the real shift in perception for me there, to know that actually, my body is telling me if things are not working properly, or if I'm in a situation that is not right for me. I'm not kind of, not looking for that guidance from elsewhere. It's here. Mm-hmm. It's in my skin. Mm.
Yes, it absolutely is. So I would like, I kind of feel mesmerized. Like this is such spot on material and help. But we have to conclude at some point. And I would love for you to send, do you have a parting message that you would like to say to people who are going through this right now?
Yes. That you are deeply connected. To find what it is that is your bliss, and do that by listening to the body and listening and feeling for what feels like a yes, so what feels light, and then what feels like a no, what feels heavy or dark. So begin there and go with what feels light, go with what feels bright. And it doesn't always have to make logical sense. In fact, more often than not, it doesn't. But go with the inspiration, because that is your true guidance. That is your true north. And that will take you to places where, as Joseph Campbell says, you follow your bliss and doors will open for you where there were only walls.
Yes. Beautiful. It gives me the chills. That was one of the quotes that I actually wrote down a couple of years ago when I was going through this process myself. I'd say that's wonderful, wonderful advice.
Oh, it's one of my favorite quotes. I love it.
Absolutely. So how do people learn more about you and connect with you?
So they can go to my website, which is www.luciannechard.com. I have a monthly newsletter that I send out with inspiration and offers and events as well. On my website, I've got a link to a workshop that I run. If anyone based in London, I run a workshop called the Lunar Light Studio, which is a gathering of like-minded and warm-hearted souls to meditate and explore creative writing and that kind of stuff, which is really cool. So I'm also on Facebook. I've got a page which is simple, easy to find, Lucy-Anne Chard. I'm there, and then I'm on Instagram as well. So my Instagram feed is as regular as my Facebook. So I'm there consistently, and I'm there as Lucy-Anne Chard as well. So lucyannechard.com is my website. Sign up for any newsletter information or for any events that are coming up. And then also on my website, I've actually recently created a singing meditation, which is available to download on the site. And it's a meditation and a chant that I created and I sort of composed myself. So if anybody would like more serenity in their lives, then that's there for them.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really a delight.
Thank you very much for having me. It was wonderful to chat.
I appreciate it. It had fun too. Have a good evening.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the Weight Free Wellness Podcast. And remember, when you're cruising around and perusing on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, make sure to stop by and say hi. Tell us what you're enjoying out of the podcast and what you'd like to hear more of. And of course, we would so totally appreciate it if you leave us a review on iTunes or even on Facebook, on our Facebook page, Weight Free Wellness. That would mean so much to us and also help others who are seeking wellness podcasts and information to know that this is a valuable resource. Thank you so much. Until next time.